Above all powers, above all kings, above all nature and all created things, above all wisdom and all the ways of man, you were here before the world began. Above all kingdoms, above all thrones, above all wonders the world has ever known, above all wealth and treasures of the earth, there's no way to measure what you're worth. Crucified, laid behind the stone, you live to die, rejected and alone, like a rose trampled on the ground. You took the fall and thought of me above all. You were crucified, laid behind the stone. You lived to die, rejected and alone, like a rose trampled on the ground. You took the fall and thought of me above all. Thank you, Lord. You thought of me and you gave your life for me. That's how I wanna be, Lord. Keep you first in my heart, Lord, above all.
Sit back and close your eyes and imagine yourself there. As you hear this story, I will tell you now. This story comes from Matthew 26 and starts in verse 47. While Jesus was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12 apostles, came there. He had a big crowd of people with him, all of them carrying swords and clubs. They had been sent from the high priests and the elders of the people. Judas planned to do something to show them which one Jesus was. And he said, "The one I will kiss will be Jesus. Arrest him." So he went to Jesus and he said, "Hello, teacher." Then Judas kissed him. And Jesus answered him, "Friend, do what you have come to do." Then the men came and grabbed Jesus and arrested him. And when that happened, one of the followers of Jesus grabbed his sword and pulled it out. And he swung it at the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to the man, "Put your sword back in its place. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. Surely you know I can ask my Father, and he would give me more than 12 armies of angels. But it must happen this way to show the truth of what Scripture said." Then Jesus said to the crowd, "Why do you come get me with swords and clubs as if I were a criminal? Every day I sat in the temple area teaching. You did not arrest me there. But all these things have happened to show the full meaning of what the prophets wrote." Then all of Jesus' followers left him, and they ran away. The men who arrested Jesus led him to the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. The teachers of the law and the older Jewish leaders were gathered there. Peter followed Jesus, but stayed back at a distance. He followed them into the yard of the high priest's house. Peter went in and sat down with the guards. He wanted to see what would happen to Jesus. The leading priests and the high council tried to find something against Jesus so that they could kill him. They tried to find people to lie and say that Jesus had done wrong. Many people came and told lies about him, but the council could not find a real reason to kill him. Then two people said, This man said, I can destroy the temple of God and build it again in 3 days." Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Don't you have anything to say about the charges against you? Are they telling the truth?" But Jesus said nothing. And again the high priest said to Jesus, "You are now under oath, and I command you by the power of the living God to tell us the truth. Tell us, are you the Messiah, the Son of God?" Jesus answered, "Yes, that's right. I tell you in the future that you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God, and you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven." And when the high priest heard this, he tore his clothes in anger, and he said, "This man said things that insult God. We don't need any more witnesses. You all heard the insulting words. What do you think?" And the Jewish leaders answered, "He is guilty. He must die." Then some that were there spit in Jesus' face, and they hit him with their fists. Some others slapped him, and they said, "Show us you are a prophet, Messiah. Tell us who hit you." While Peter was sitting outside in the yard, a servant girl came up to him, and she said, "You were with Jesus, that man from Galilee." But Peter told everyone there this was not true. "I don't know the man you are talking about," he said. And then he left the yard. At the gate, another girl saw him and said to the people there, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again, Peter said he was never with Jesus. He said, "I swear to God, I don't know that man." And a short time later, those standing there went to Peter and said, "We know you were one of them. It's clear from the way you talk." Then Peter began to curse, and he said, "I swear to God, I don't know this man." And as soon as he said this, a rooster crowed. And then he remembered what Jesus had told him. "Before the rooster crows, you will say 3 times that you don't know me." Then Peter went outside and cried bitterly. Early the next morning, all the leading priests and the older leaders of the people met and decided to kill Jesus. They tied him and led him away and handed him over to Pilate the governor. Judas saw that they had decided to kill Jesus. He was the one who handed him over. And when he saw what happened, he was very sorry for what he had done. So he took the 30 silver coins back to the priests and the other older Jewish leaders. Judas said, "I have sinned. I handed over to you an innocent man to be killed." And the Jewish leaders answered, "We don't care. That's a problem for you, not us." So Judas threw the money into the temple, and then he went out from there and hung himself. The leading priests picked up the silver coins in the temple, and they said, "Our law does not allow us to keep the money with the temple money, because this money has been paid for a man's death. So they decided to use the money to buy a field called the Potter's Field. This field would be a place to bury people who have died while visiting Jerusalem. That is why the field is still called the Field of Blood. This shows the full meaning of what the prophet Jeremiah said. They took 30 silver coins. That's how much the people of Israel decided to pay for his life. And they used the silver coins to buy the Potter's Field, as the Lord commanded me. Jesus stood before Pilate, the governor, who asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Yes, that's right." Then the leading priests and the older Jewish leaders made their accusations against Jesus. He said nothing. So Pilate said to him, "Don't you hear all these charges they're making against you? Why don't you answer?" But Jesus still did not say anything, and this really surprised the governor. Every year at Passover time, the governor would free one prisoner, whichever one the people wanted him to free. And that time there was a man in prison who was known to be very bad. His name was Barabbas. When a crowd gathered, Pilate said to them, "I will free one man for you. Which one do you want me to free, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" Pilate knew that they had handed Jesus over to him because they were jealous of him. And when Pilate was sitting there in his place of judgment, his wife sent a message to him, and it said, "Don't do anything with this man. He is not guilty. Last night I had a dream about him, and it troubled me very much." But the leading priests and older Jewish leaders told the people to ask for Barabbas to be set free and for Jesus to be killed. And Pilate said, "I have Barabbas and Jesus. Which one do you want me to set free for you?" The people answered, "Barabbas." Pilate asked, "So then what should I do with Jesus, the one who is called the Messiah?" And all the people said, "Kill him on the cross." And Pilate asked, "Why do you want me to kill him? What wrong has he done?" But they shouted louder, "Kill him on the cross." And Pilate saw that there was nothing he can do to make these people change their mind. In fact, it looked as if there would be a riot. So he took some water, washed his hands in front of all of them, and he said, "I am not guilty of this man's death. You are the ones doing it." And the people answered, "We will take full responsibility for his death. You can blame us and even our children." And then Pilate set Barabbas free. And he told some soldiers to beat Jesus with whips. Then he handed him over to the soldiers to be killed on the cross. Then Pilate's soldiers took Jesus into the governor's palace. All the soldiers gathered around him. They took off Jesus' clothes and put a red robe on him. And they made him a crown from thorny branches and put it on his head. And they put a stick in his right hand. And then they bowed before him, making fun of him. And they said, "We salute you, King of the Jews," as they spit on him. And then they took his stick and kept hitting him in the head with it. And after they were finished making fun of him, the soldiers took off his robe and put his own clothes on him again. And then they led him away to be killed by the cross. The soldiers were going out of the city with Jesus when they saw a man from Cyrene named Simon. And they forced him to carry Jesus' cross. And they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. There, the soldiers gave Jesus some wine mixed with gall, but when he tasted it, he refused to drink it. And the soldiers nailed Jesus to that cross. Then they threw dice to divide his clothes among them. The soldiers stayed there to guard him, and they put a sign above his head with the charge against him written on it, and the sign read, "This is Jesus, King of the Jews." And people walked around and shouted insults at Jesus. They shook their heads and said, "You said you could destroy the temple and build it again in 3 days, so save yourself. Come down off that cross if you are really the Son of God." The leading priests, the teachers of the law, and the older Jewish leaders were also there. They made fun of Jesus the same as the other people did. They said, "He saves others, but he cannot save himself. People say he is the King of Israel. If he is the king, he should come down off that cross, and then we will believe in him. He trusted God, so let God save him now, if God really wants him. He himself said, 'I am the Son of God.' And in the same way, the criminals on the crosses also insulted him. At noon, the whole country became dark. The darkness continued for 3 hours, and about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out loudly, Eli, Eli, sabachthani. And this means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of the people standing there heard this and said, He's calling Elijah. And quickly one of them ran to grab a sponge, and he filled the sponge with sour wine and tied the sponge to a stick to give the sponge to Jesus to get a drink from it. But others said, Don't bother him. We want to see if Elijah will come save him. Again, Jesus cried out loudly, It is finished. And then he died. But when Jesus died, the curtain in the temple was torn into 2 pieces. The tear started at the top and tore all the way to the bottom. Also, the earth shook and the rocks were broken. The graves were opened, and many of God's people who have died were raised from death. They went into the holy city, and many people saw them. The army officers and the soldiers guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and everything that happened, and they were very afraid, and they said he really was the Son of God. Everyone left him. His disciples left him. There were only 2 at the foot of the cross when he died. 2. Think about that. Where were the other 10? They spit on him. They hit him. They beat him on the head. They hit him with whips. They shouted insults. Even God crushed him under his own wrath. And what did he do to deserve this? What did he do to deserve any of this? This is what we deserve. Think about your own lives for a second. Think about where you were before you got saved. This is what we earned for ourselves. This is the punishment we should have. This is the punishment I should have had. But God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever shall believe shall not perish but live eternally. This is the love of God, the absolute, overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. That while we were still sinners, he would go through all of this. That while we couldn't even give Jesus 2 minutes of our day to pray, to open up his word, to be thankful, while we live our lives never even bothering to acknowledge his existence until we need something, while we live our lives thinking that we deserve heaven because we're good people, yet while we were still his enemies, Christ died in our place. How then, brothers and sisters, can we live any other way than to spend time every day in his word, on our knees in prayer, trusting him, sharing in his suffering, offering our lives as a living sacrifice to the one who offered himself as a sacrifice to us? So as we go through life and have times of struggle, think about Jesus. They insulted him, but he never insulted them back. They spit on him and they mocked him, and he prayed for them. He said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. So we should do everything without arguing and complaining. We should accept our struggles in life with joy and thankfulness, because God counted us as important enough to share in that suffering, knowing one day we will share in his glory. So live for the eternal, knowing that our lives here are short, and it doesn't matter what we may or may not deal with here on this earth. There is a better life for us in the future, a life that will never die, riches that will never perish. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, but fear not, I have overcome the world. And when Jesus died that day, he did just that. He satisfied the wrath of God so that me and you can have a direct and intimate relationship with our Creator. Like a rose trampled on the ground, he took the fall. And he thought of me, he thought of you above all. May God bless you all. Until next time.
You thought of me, and you gave your life for me. That's how I wanna be, Lord. Keep you first in my heart, Lord.